Welcome back. The GDP figures have declined drastically by 51% to be specific. But what does that mean for you and I as consumers? To talk to us more about this, I'm joined by consumer economist Tendani Mantshimuli. Tendai, good afternoon to you. Thank you for your time on ENCA. Not really shocking statistics, understanding the context, but certainly concerning.
Very concerning, Clement, because I think this is the biggest decline we've seen since South Africa started keeping record in terms of GDP. It's understandable because of the lockdown that we would be at this point. But for you and I as consumers, it's really concerning because, remember, this is talking about historical figures. GDP measures activity, economic activity as at the last quarter. What should concern us is what it means for the economy going forward. One, we know that we're going to have an increase in unemployment because companies have had to lay people off. If you look at the numbers, the biggest declines were in the services sector, where you'd have your hotels, your tourism sectors, your you also had some in the secondary sector, like the construction sector, manufacturing, mining. These are industries that are labor intensive, and unfortunately, because they're also export facing, it means that demand for the goods that we do produce might not be that robust to sustain us. So you can expect a lot of job losses in the services sectors, like the ones I mentioned, tourist related, plus the construction sector and manufacturing. For these industries to pick up, you need a lot of confidence, both by the business and the consumers. And yesterday we saw the numbers from FNB that consumer confidence has declined. And what also happened with the pandemic is that consumption was displaced from things that we would normally buy, for people to now move to buy issues related to keeping ourselves healthy, sanitizers, protective stuff and so forth, and that benefited the health sector. But the rest of the industries, you didn't have strong enough demand. My concern is lack of job opportunities, and that is going to perpetuate a declining consumer confidence and the fact that we won't be able to spend to support the industries that we need to support.
And obviously, because of that impact on the services sector, we've now seen the average person's income also dropping. But you've mentioned about where consumers have been able to spend money. And from the figures I was looking at, they've spent money on communication. And I suppose it makes sense because they've been cut off from family and friends during the pandemic, and many of them have been working from home.
Remember also, that would also have been your company supporting you to work from home. Yes, yeah. So those sectors did benefit because there's an increased demand in communication. However, for the economy as a whole, I do think that government needs to step up to support particularly the smaller businesses which are not going to make it. Some of them have already folded. We know that the government had set aside about 500 billion to support industries in distress, and the disbursement of that hadn't really gone out as robustly as we had anticipated. So that is going to help somewhat. But what is also going to help probably is that the tourism sector might benefit from the interprovincial travel that is allowed under Level 3. But I think where government, in hindsight, could have done better was allowing online shopping to start earlier than it did, because that could have supported more industries than it did when we had a hard lockdown for months without any retail trade happening online. That could have supported, but this is hindsight, is always a perfect vision.
So what form would this assistance you're talking about take to small businesses? Are you suggesting that maybe we need another relief package for small businesses?
For me, the relief package should entail those kind of businesses. Remember, at first, when we started, banks were supposed to offer assistance to businesses and consumers who were not able to service their debt during that time. I think that has wound up, if it's not in the process of winding up. Is there something that government can do in terms of supporting those guys who cannot get loans through the private sector otherwise to continue with their businesses. Also, if government spending, you'll see that it's one of the few industries that didn't decline that much. It just declined by less than 1%. If government spending is targeted to where it's supposed to be in terms of if they're spending on protective equipment, it lands where it's supposed to be at the end consumer, which would be the small business that is providing the equipment. That goes a long way rather than it being diverted to other nefarious sources that we've been reading about in the papers. But I think if they are targeted spending goes where it should be, I think it can go some way to ease the burden on small businesses. Also, the disbursements of the relief to other consumers, particularly the most vulnerable, if that continues, it's supposed to end in October, has eased up the burden somewhat on those low-income consumers.
So are we going to be able to recover anytime soon as consumers? I mean, some economists are optimistic that we may see a recovery in our economy in the third quarter.
So we have seen in the months, I think the level 2 came in a month or so ago. We've already seen green shoots, particularly in the retail sector. The numbers, the high-frequency data is not as negative as it used to be. So as the economy has eased up and some employers are calling back their employees to come back and pick up on the demand that is coming up, you're starting to see those green shoots emerging. Although I'll caution again to say, while that is good news, my concern is how confident do South Africans feel about the prospect of the economy going forward. That informs the measure of consumer confidence. And when we spend on durable goods, on cars and housing, then the economy really picks up and recovers, not just spending on food and necessities.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time, Tendai. That was consumer economist Tendani Mantshimuli.